All right, in Better Books today, we're talking about a new novel. It's called Black Diamond Fall. It's out tomorrow.
Author Joseph Olshan is here today. We're one stop on his national book tour, so thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
We're excited to. This is one of those books that I think, like all of your books, but we can really get into it. And obviously from our place, there's a little New England connection. It's one of those books we can kind of just escape, and we should be reading more novels.
Well, reading novels these days is like going in horse and buggies. people want to read memoirs. They want to read real stories. So anything that's based on a true story is not quite as good as the actual true story
But
itself.
I have to tell you, I'm in a book club, and I don't think they've picked any true stories. Like, they're going with like fictional novels, which is really terrific.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Your first book. Tell us about your first book.
My first book, Clara's Heart, was about the relationship between a housekeeper, a Jamaican housekeeper, and a young man who she was taking care of during and after his parents' divorce. And they forge a very close relationship, and then the relationship eventually gets pulled apart. So it was a novel that luckily got out there because it was made into a movie.
How exciting is that? I mean, you find out one of your first books is being turned into a movie.
Well, the funny thing is that when I was with my family before the book was published, before the movie was made, and we actually went to see Whoopi Goldberg in her Broadway show. Oh. And sitting in the audience, and she did her routine, which was a Jamaican housekeeper, which is like the Jamaican housekeeper in my book. And everybody in my family turned to me and looked at me, but we had no idea that was going to happen. And a couple of years later, she was actually playing the role of Clara.
That is such a great story.
So this book is actually, it's a novel, but it's based on these two real life stories that may or may not be related. So we're going to feel, even if you like true stories, you're going to get the creativity and the feeling of like, oh, this could be real.
Yeah. Well, at Middlebury College in Vermont, in around 2007, 2008, a student from Arizona was staying on campus during winter break when the university was pretty much shut down. There weren't a lot of people around, and he went for a walk at night and never came back. Mm. And so obviously the town and the college were very, upset and galvanized by the disappearance, and he was looked for. But eventually, after several weeks, they had to give up the search. And the thing about Vermont, living in Vermont, is that any even small things, like a cat getting caught up in a tree, makes the news. So something like this, which is huge, just completely took over the news waves, and everybody was talking about it. And so, that is really good for a writer, to have events like this, which are so sort of magnified. And I was there at the time, and of course I knew about it, and so that was one of the reasons why I thought I'd want to write about it, because it was dramatic. Also, at around the same time, the Robert Frost farm was broken into, and by a bunch of high school students, and because the two events occurred close together, I thought to myself, how can I bring them together? And I actually didn't bring them together until I started writing the novel, and I wrote my way to a connection between the two events, basically.
Wow. It's suspense fiction.
Suspense fiction.
And it's going to keep you on the edge of your seat.
I hope so.
Oh, I think it will. And just some of the character development. How do you you moved to Vermont from New York. Does that help you with your writing in terms of being closer to the subject matter?
Well, I mean, I think being from New York gives me an appreciation for small town life, because I grew up in a much sort of more rapid-paced environment. So. And I think it's better for me. I'm able to think much more clearly when I'm in Vermont. So, but the other thing too is that I write very autobiographically, and so I look for these stories that can have a sort of a public appeal, but I really am trying to work out my own sort of autobiographical, difficulties and challenges, basically.
Exactly.
People are always amazed by someone who writes a book, and I'm curious your process. Are you disciplined? Is it like you lock yourself in a room for 8 hours and don't come out, or what's your process like?
Okay, my process is like your process. I mean, it is a job like anyone else's job, and if you do your job right and you love it, you can make it into poetry. One time I went into a Midas muffler shop, and the guy running it, you could see he really loved the job, and he made it like poetry. So it's really like a job like anyone else. There's no magic to it. Lots of writers like to say it's magic,
it's very romanticized.
It's romanticized, but I don't romanticize it. It's my job.
Do you type? Do you write by hand?
I type on my computer, and because I'm of the age when I first started writing, computers were around, and but I feel very lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great. So when you see your books and you see your movie title up on marquees, it's got to give you just a thrill.
It does. It gives me a thrill, but it gives me a bit of confidence that I can keep doing it.
Right.
Because if people are interested in your work when it's in that format, you figure they're going to be interested in the work that you produce subsequently.
Well, we're excited to have you because not only can we get the book, which is coming out tomorrow, but we're going to tell people because they can go visit you at one of our favorite bookstores and you'll be signing copies, and so people here in Connecticut can get up close and personal with the author.
That's great. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Again, the book is called Black Diamond Fall. You're going to find it at your favorite bookstore.
You're going to find it, you're going to find Joseph also at R.J. Julia Booksellers in Madison tonight.
Oh, it's tonight.
Tonight. He's talking about his book. He'll be there at 7 p.m. so you can get a little conversation and signed copy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a quick time out, and on the other side of the break, we will be telling you about some of the things happening this week and this season that we think you're going to want to know about.
See you back here in 2.